And we begin with what is the D-Day for Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Today, the House of Commons, the Speaker will rule whether his Brexit deal will go up for a vote again in the Parliament or not. This after, in a rare Saturday sitting, lawmakers voted 322 to 306 to withhold their approval of Johnson's deal until a legislation to implement it has been passed. Prime Minister Johnson will be aiming to get in-principle approval for his deal while he works on the Brexit bill. This so that he could avoid a Brexit delay despite requesting the European Union for an extension. However, that can only happen if the Speaker, John Bercow, allows the government to go up for voting again. But that still remains the first step for Boris Johnson to get his deal approved. This as lawmakers can once choose not to back his deal. Remember, this was the fourth time that lawmakers did not approve a Brexit deal. Boris Johnson's predecessor, Theresa May's agreement was rejected thrice. As required by law, Johnson has already asked the European Union for a Brexit extension. In a half-hearted letter to the European Union Council Chief Donald Tusk, Johnson said that he wanted the UK to leave the Eurozone by the current deadline of the 31st of October. The EU is waiting for the proceedings in the British Parliament to end before starting its own deliberations on the divorce agreement next week. The EU is set to issue a statement on the request for another Brexit delay. Now, the British Prime Minister suffered a setback on Saturday with just 10 days to go until the UK is due to leave the bloc. Analysts believe that the lawmakers may end up backing Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit deal.
And it looks as if he might get his deal through the House of Commons. You can't exaggerate how tired British MPs are of this endless saga. So I think it's possible his deal might go through in principle, but even that wouldn't stop amendments being made to it as the legislation enacting it went through Parliament.
And now we have our correspondent Mia Alberti joining us live from Brussels here on WION Dispatch. Mia, thank you so much for being with us. Yes, so much action taking place in London, but at the end of the day, it's all going to lead up to the European Union because Brussels is now all eyes on London.
Exactly. The European Union cannot do anything without knowing what the British Parliament decides to do. At the end of the European Council summit last week, European leaders were very clear in the message that our work here is done, and now it was up for Boris Johnson to get the Parliament to approve this new withdrawal agreement, which we're seeing that he's having some difficulties doing that. So I'm sure that you leaders here in the European Union are watching very closely what happens in London, because of course it's the future of the bloc that's at stake. A lot of changes at stake with only 10 days to go for the official deadline.
Right, Mia, then tell us then, what is the mood in Brussels at this point in time? We're talking about another extension of the Brexit deadline. That is something that's half-heartedly asked for by the British Prime Minister. But then again, even let's assume that Britain agrees to ask for an extension. Do you think the European Union at this point in time is in the mood to give one?
Well, I think the broader message is that the EU wants to avoid a no deal at any cost. So they would do anything inside of their principles to get a deal, to get the United Kingdom to leave the European Union under certain rules that have been agreed by both sides. That being said, we've heard some European leaders last week on the summit saying that they do not see that they would approve this new extension if there isn't a new reason. For example, we heard that from the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, Xavier Bettel. If there is no new reason for a new extension, then I won't approve it. That's what he said. And by that he means maybe new elections in the UK, maybe a second referendum. So unless the UK presents a new reason for an extension, some EU leaders are very hesitant in giving that. And of course, this decision has to be unanimous. So it's only needed one of these member states to reject this new extension that could mean that Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be in a very bad situation.
Right, Mia, I just have one more thing to ask you before we let go of you. At this point in time, is Brexit going to take place on the currently appointed deadline of the 31st of October?
Well, from what we're seeing from the European Union, all preparations are being done counting with the Brexit on October 31st. Today we heard a European spokesperson saying that the European Council has approved this new withdrawal agreement and now it has sent it to the Parliament. So according to the European Union, everything is going accordingly to plan. So we are expecting the European Parliament to approve this new withdrawal agreement this week. So no changes there in those plans. Of course, I think the European Union is prepared for any scenario. They are prepared for a deal, this deal on October 31st. But I think they're also preparing for a no deal on October 31st. But I think they are very adamant that they want this to end by that deadline. But of course, like I said, if they can avoid a no deal, I think they will go for it.
Right, Mia Alberti joining us live with that update straight from Brussels. Thank you, Mia, for joining us here on WION Dispatch.